McLaren have received some bad news regarding the rear wing of their car, and while the Woking-based squad was adamant that everything is legal with the DRS flap when loaded under high-speed circumstances, the governing body has decided otherwise. The complaints of Red Bull and Ferrari have seemingly brought the desired result. However, it looks like the next couple of races will still go in McLaren's favour, as this will only take place from Las Vegas onwards. With the FIA intervening regarding the DRS flap of McLaren, how much damage did the Woking-based squad do with this illegal loophole? And more importantly, can they continue with the upward trend even without the flexibility of this part? It's safe to say that one of the most controversial parts of McLaren's car, as seen in Baku, was the DRS flap. Obviously, this is not the first race in which it was introduced, but due to the long delta, it was quite easily visible that the DRS flap had opened up a bit more, creating a phenomenon of mini DRS that helped the Woking-based squad with the top speed of the car. This is what aided Piastri's defence against Leclerc, with the Ferrari driver being baffled as to how the combination of slipstream, DRS and fresher tyres weren't enough for him to complete a pass on Piastri. But the Aussie driver was adamant that there was nothing wrong with the design of the car, and when talking about it to a greater extent, he went on to say, "It's legal. We get tested a lot and it passes. It is certainly not the magic ticket or bullet for why we are competitive. I am pretty happy with it." This is not the opinion of drivers like Perez and Leclerc, as they were much harsher in giving their verdict on the rear flap of the MCL 38. Leclerc went on to say that his team doesn't have a mini DRS upgrade for Singapore, so it will be quite hard to go against their rivals from Woking, even though that effect is not very helpful on tracks with maximum downforce requirements. This was also the primary reason why this innovation was banned from Las Vegas onwards, as it's likely that the rear wing that McLaren will fit on this track will be the same one from Baku and not the one from Singapore, so the flexing phenomenon won't happen nearly as much throughout the next couple of weekends as it happened in Baku. In their official statement, the FIA were quite adamant that they will collect data from Baku and will decide whether or not this element of the MCL 38 will be banned. And now the governing body have told the Woking-based squad that they must modify the flexing rear wing that caused a stir after the Azerbaijan GP. Interestingly enough, the rear wing itself hasn't been proclaimed illegal, as Sergio Perez and Leclerc said, but the team is nevertheless forced to implement adjustments to control how much the element moves. What is known in the sport of Formula One is that bending and flexing is a must, especially under high-speed loads, because if these elements do not flex, then they will break. However, there is a certain allowance when it comes to how much they can flex, and we must go back to 2021 and look at the bizarre reason why Hamilton's car was disqualified in Brazil. Its DRS element opened 0.2 millimeters more than the allowed limit. So to think that this genius element of McLaren would remain the same in the remainder of the season was definitely a bit far-fetched, and that is something that Christian Horner went on to say as well. When talking about the MCL 38's controversial part, he added, "I'd be surprised if we saw the rear wing from Baku again. It sets a precedent now for we don't want to rush to design that deform like that. If it's deemed okay, then everybody will do the same." This is also very important because if the FIA didn't take a stronger stance on the rear wing of McLaren, they would have forced the other teams in pursuing the same direction, and it would have definitely hurt the spirit of the regulations. While certain loopholes are allowed, there is a certain limit that McLaren have seemingly gone over, and in the last 3 races of the season, Las Vegas, Qatar and Abu Dhabi, the advantage of McLaren might shrink just in time when Norris will be very close to Verstappen in the Drivers' Championship. And Fred Vasseur has also been quite adamant with his request to the FIA, with the Frenchman stating that we should be easily understanding their frustration regarding the rear wing of McLaren, because Leclerc found it almost impossible to fight against Piastri in Baku, even with the help of fresher tyres, slipstream and the effect of DRS. Elaborating on McLaren's rear wing, Vasseur pointed out towards the importance of every single tenth of a second in this season and how it can affect your a race to the degree of being P1 or P6. Furthermore, he stated, "We have to give the responsibility to this continuing to the FIA, and it's not my job to do it. The FIA have to do it, and we have to trust them honestly, but I'm not complaining about this. I think it's more than borderline." We also have the video and the picture of this, and it's a bit frustrating when, if you remember perfectly, the situation in Monza, we had 5 cars in 200ths of a second, and you move from P1, P2 to P5, P6 for 200ths. In Baku, we arrived 10 laps in a row, side by side, turn 1. You can imagine that we have a bit of frustration. If we are to believe Piastri, this is not the secret to their performance, because they've been quite dominant on tracks that have had high downforce requirements too, such as Zandvoort. This is why Zak Brown believes that everything is in the spirit of the regulations when it comes to the rear wing of McLaren. And when addressing this matter, he said, "These Formula One engineers are very clever. They have certainly had some pretty awesome race cars the last decade. The rear wing passed the test, so good on our team for coming up with something that is high performance. The team is fully aware of everything that is on our race car, and they are comfortable with it. So I think it's inevitable now that we're leading the championship, that everyone will be looking at our car and going, 'Not sure I like that,' and like that." And that's the nature of the game. It passed every single test. So I think this is Formula One, and it's clever engineering, and the FIA is fine with it. So it's business as usual. The statements made from Sergio Perez were quite harsh regarding this matter, as the Mexican driver went on to say that he's very surprised that the FIA didn't take matters into their own hands much earlier. Verstappen pointed out that it's quite obvious his team and every other squad out there will follow suit if there is no action taken from the FIA, which is the case with the flexibility of the front wings. But Perez's belief is that the flexing of this part is not part of the regulations, as he went on to say, "Yeah, it sounds like it. It's clear that it's out of the regulations and it is a legal car. So yep, very surprised with it." Also, they've done a few races with that rear wing on, but nothing did happen. I think from our side, we just have to focus on ourselves. We had a massive damage in terms of championship, and they are not far ahead. I really thought that the flexing of the rear wing was not part of the regulations, right? My personal opinion, you see clearly the rear wing is bending, but obviously they've done the checks and it seems like this is a legal car. I'm pretty surprised. I thought that wasn't allowed, but it seems like it is. So yeah, I think I am as surprised as you all are. It's definitely a massive benefit. The bad news does not seem to end there for McLaren though, because Red Bull are not going to stop with their process anytime soon. Helmut Marko admitted that now it's up to the FIA to be more proactive regarding the front wing of the MCL38. We've seen that the upper flaps are moving a bit too much for the liking of F1 rivals, and obviously in the comparison with other front wings, it's visible that McLaren have either found something very, very clever that the rest of the grid will follow suit, or plain illegal that needs to be banned sooner rather than later. When talking about this, Helmut Marko said, "We protested McLaren's rear wing 3 times. Today, the FIA made a very correct decision. They found McLaren's rear wing unsuitable. Now it's time for the front wings. We will look at that too." With all this in mind, do you think the Norris and McLaren's hunt in the Drivers' Championship will be further hindered by these requirements made by the FIA? And more importantly, do you think the Red Bull and Ferrari played it fair by applying pressure to the governing body to do the right thing here? Let us know what you think in the comments below, and once you've done that, have a look at the video that's appearing on your screen right now.